They say men are afraid of successful women, but the truth is different. The higher these women climb, the harder they make love. The problem isn't men. In today's video, we'll see successful women sharing the struggles they face in relationships.
Here's a not so fun fact, but I think that the more you heal and grow, especially as a woman, the harder it is to find a partner. Because once you start doing work on yourself, you really begin to notice everything. You notice when you're repeating old patterns, you catch the red flags quicker, you become more discerning, you trust your gut instead of arguing with it all the time. For me, it has become more difficult to connect with people who are shallow and surface level. It has also become hard for me to want to be around people who expect connection without being vulnerable or developing real intimacy. You sort of become less impressed by charm, and you're really looking for emotional maturity and emotional literacy, and those things are, not so easy to find all the time. And at least for me, I'm looking for somebody who's already done some of their own healing. I don't look for them to be necessarily as far along as I am on this journey, but somebody who's at least on a personal growth journey, somebody who's, become self-aware to some degree. Because then, when you're in a relationship, inevitably it is a catalyst for growth. And if you start to date and get into a serious relationship with somebody who hasn't already started on that journey, you're going to have to drag them through it. And that's painful. It's much better to be with somebody who's already faced themselves a little bit, And when you think about all those things, it weeds out a lot of people. So not saying it's impossible, but probably will take a lot longer to find someone the more you do the healing and the more you grow. But not to say that you shouldn't do it. You should totally do it because it's worth it. Anyway, can anybody else relate to this, or is it just me?
This woman believes that healing and growing made her more selective, but in reality, she just built impossible filters. She wants a man who's done the same emotional work as she has, without understanding that men don't operate the same way. She turned love into an emotional job interview where few can pass. Instead of seeing a partner to grow with, she wants someone already molded to her vision. In the end, her high level of awareness became a wall that pushes real love away.
Okay, but nobody talks enough about the struggle of being a single, independent girl with high standards who's very emotionally intelligent and very self-aware. And you're just wait, I'm in my yearning stage. I think I want a boyfriend. I'm in my 20s and 30s. Let's freaking go. You know what I'm saying? But then there's a completely different side to you, that's a little emotionally unavailable and hyper independent, possibly an avoidant attachment, possibly an Enneagram 8 little workaholic with X trauma. And you're just wait, so what am I supposed to do with that information? I'm a walking contradiction because I keep going out with these men that have expiration dates and I know won't last because it keeps me from getting, emotionally invested and then hurt. But at the same time, then that keeps me single. It's like a vicious cycle. Anyways, if you relate, hi, I'm Savannah Lee. I make music for you. I just dropped 2 songs and let me soundtrack your summer. The first song, You Don't Exist Yet. It's about the girls that are in the yearning stage that want a boyfriend. Hasn't happened yet. And then, cut to the chase, a song for the girls that date men with expiration dates. If you relate to this, I really hope this finds you.
She recognized the problem but refuses the solution. She claims to be independent, emotionally intelligent, and have high standards. Yet she lives in a cycle where she purposely chooses the wrong men to avoid real emotional involvement. This is the contradiction of modern women. They say they want love, but they build emotional walls no man can climb. Until she lets go of ego and fear, she'll keep collecting stories and songs, but not a solid relationship.
Here is what I learned about the dating scene once I became a high income earner myself. Okay, so for full transparency, I was making $80,000 at around 25 years old. And then at 26 years old, I jumped and I started making over $200,000. My package was over 230. Okay, but just to round it up. The men that I was going after were no longer special, okay? So the men that I thought, oh, they have money, oh, they're la 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 la, they were not special. There was nothing special about them. It was the perception of prestige. These men were not more capable than me. They were not more successful than me. They just had more ambition at some point, but I had much more. I just ended up actually in a very male-dominated industry to the point where I was one of the very few women that was there. So it is a man's world, let me tell you that, and it is gate-kept. But I was relentless and just went after things and did not think about my gender. The man that I was dating, okay, no longer was special to me. I looked at him and he became my competition in that he saw me as competition. He was 30 years old and all of a sudden he was like, oh, You're now making more than me technically. What? Whoa. So he went full on crazy mode where he was like he was just mean out of nowhere, just cruel out of nowhere. I dropped him like that. And there's more to that story, but it was horrendous, okay? 3, and most importantly, what you need to realize is you got to go out and make that money yourself. I don't care how hard you have to work, get it fucking done, okay? Because you are not going to attach yourself to a man to succeed in life. If you think that man's money is going to protect you, or that man is rich and he's the reason why you're going to get the life that you want, that's not happening. You're at the mercy of his love. You're at his mercy.
This woman believes that after she started earning a high salary, the problem became that men were no longer special. She doesn't realize the root of the issue isn't the money, but the change in her attitude that came with it. When she began competing with men instead of complimenting them, the relationship turned into an ego battle. The man stopped feeling respected and valued, and she started viewing men as rivals, not partners. Deep down, she doesn't want a man she can control or outshine, but she also refuses to stand beside a man who leads. The result? Loneliness.
Something I've observed in my matchmaking business is that women who are smart, independent, and successful tend to struggle the most in their dating lives. And I believe this is because of hypergamy, which basically means that women tend to want to date up. They want someone who's superior to them financially and in status and in IQ. And so what happens is the more money a woman makes and the more independent she becomes, the more her dating pool shrinks, because the pool of men that she is going to be attracted to is going to be smaller. But the problem is men date based on a different criteria. Men are not dating women based on their wealth. They're not dating women based on their IQ. They're dating them based on, is she going to be a good mother to my kids? Is she nurturing? Does she make me feel like a man? Is she attractive? And so you have this imbalance. And it becomes a bigger problem as women get older, because then they start competing with women who are 5, 10, 15 plus years younger than them. And again, because men are not dating off the same values and criteria, it makes it harder for them to find a mate. And I think this stems from a few different things. One being feminism. You know, the road to hell was paved with good intention. I don't think feminism is a bad thing, but I do think it's unsurprising that the more independent women have become, the more childless and single they've stayed. And also the destruction of the family nucleus. As divorce rates started to rise, you had more moms telling their daughters, don't ever put yourself in a position where you have to depend on a man. And like, was the juice worth the squeeze? Let me know what you think in the comments. And follow me for more. Bye!
This woman clearly describes what many refuse to admit. Hypergamy, the natural desire to seek men above them, turns against them when they climb too high on the social ladder. The problem isn't that men fear successful women. It's that men don't value a woman for what's in her bank account, but for who she is as a woman. While these women look for status and wealth, men look for femininity, respect, and the ability to build a family. When they prioritize power and independence, they end up losing the very traits men value most.
Why are beautiful, successful, emotionally intelligent women really struggling to date today? First theory is that men really need to feel valued, and they feel like women have surpassed that place in life where they are able to provide value. So the traditional man is really struggling to feel validation in a relationship with an independent woman because they don't need to earn for them or provide for them. Women are very well capable of that themselves. What I've observed is that this mentality has really started to prevent men from investing in women who have really established careers and seem like they have their shit together. Oh, she's very successful. Well, she can take care of herself. She's doing this, she's doing that. Where do I fit into all of this? I have a message for the guys who think like this, where dependency and being dependent and providing value in a relationship does not solely come monetarily or through finances. I will bet you that there are many women out there who are in these positions, smart, successful, financially independent, who if you gave an opportunity and asked, hey, what could I do for you? You would find a list of chores, handyman work, emotional support, all forms of ways that they would like to be dependent on you if you would provide the opportunity for them to vocalize their wants. On this app alone, I've heard women time and time express that I would like a partner to be able to share life with and share worries with and be able to take on half the workload of life and be spoiled and treated and doing all the things that sometimes come with a traditional relationship as well. Women do not want to be project managers for their relationships. That is where you can really step in and take on that be dependent on me role, that leader role, as you guys like to talk about, where women feel like they have to delegate task, responsibility, carry a lot of mental load in terms of what needs to be done. Not as often as you would think I've encountered, whether it's in my own practice as a therapist, where women are kind of like, I don't need any man and I just want to be in a relationship because there's no reason. It's just nothing's happening and we just have sex and live together. There is dependency in all shapes and forms. Women want that, just ask them. Like and follow for part 2, where I'm going to elaborate a lot more on the second reason why women really struggle to find relationships, especially when they're beautiful, successful, and doing all the right things in terms of taking care of themselves and still can't get to the next phase of a partnership.
She tries to justify the romantic failures of successful women by saying men don't feel valued. But the truth is, many of these women take away what gives a man purpose, his ability to provide, lead, and protect. It's not just about money, it's about energy. When a woman takes the stance of, I don't need you, a man sees no room to step in. And when he does, he ends up treated like an employee, not a leader. They want men to be men, but they don't give them space to do so.
When men make money, their pool gets bigger. When women make money, your pool gets smaller. You know, a man that's like very wealthy, has their own business. I've asked them, like, there would be like a pretty waiter that comes to the table. I'm like, would you date her? Like, and they're like, yeah, I would date the waiter. It's a natural thing for a man to take care and provide. I also want someone that's has these goals and are taking care of themselves and can teach me something, because I'm focusing on, you know, business and success and financials, which is a masculine quality. And so then you start to get smaller and smaller pools. And then there's also not as many men that feel comfortable dating a woman that's very successful, because then it brings up an insecurity within themselves that you don't need them to provide.
This woman hits the harsh truth. When a man gets rich, his options increase. When a woman gets rich, hers shrink. This isn't unfairness. It's biology and social dynamics. Men value youth, femininity, and emotional support, not a woman's salary. Women, on the other hand, look for men above, or at least equal, to them. When she reaches the top, there's almost no one above. Instead of adjusting her expectations, she blames men for her own choices.
So obviously dating's really hard, but can we talk about how much harder it is when you have a really stressful and time-consuming job? It's low-key hilarious, the kinds of questions I get now on dates as a founder versus when I was in a more traditional corporate job, especially since I used to work in the alcohol industry, more specifically beer. So guys just would always assume, like, she's such a chill girl. Truly could not be less chill, my guy. Before, it was very much like, oh, she's cool, she has a career, awesome. But now as a founder, the questions I get are a lot more, and even on first dates, a lot more of the questions I get are like, do you have time for dating? Which that happened to me. This is about a year ago. I was on a first date with this guy. Maybe it was 20, 30 minutes in. And he's like, mentioned how he used to work at a startup. He's like, they don't have time for anything. How do you have time for dating? And I was like, well, I'm here. Am I not? Like, I'm a big believer, you make time for the things you want to do. All have busy lives, no matter if you're in a position of power or not, or have a really stressful job or not. We all have things that we could do instead, and yet we choose to put time into things we care about. Don't get me wrong, obviously it's not all guys. There's guys who really love women that are very career driven and have a very intense job. But I think overall, we don't see that dynamic as much as we see it the other way around, where, you know, oh, I have a boyfriend in private equity. I don't know, I'm making it up. Oh, he works all the time, or investment banking. He's working late nights. And we, as women, usually are like, wow, that's so great. Respect his job, respect his career, and the time that's taken away from our relationship for that. Versus when it's flipped, you don't really see that for women. A lot of the guys start questioning like, well, do you have time for me? When are you gonna, you know, do X, Y, Z? Or when are we gonna be able to do this or do that? Where I'm like, if it was flipped, you wouldn't be asking these questions. Or if you had to be the one that had to take more time for your career or for whatever it was for your job, you would be asking me to be understanding. I'm sure it's the same as women who are doctors and engineers and scientists and whatever. Like, I'm just throwing careers out there, but there are a lot of stressful jobs out there that are very time consuming, and a lot of women now more than ever that are career driven. So why are we not seeing that same respect the other way? It just is something that I've been thinking about and honestly a little bit frustrated with in the dating world.
This woman complains that men don't understand her stressful job and busy schedule, but she ignores that relationships require time, energy, and priority. She demands understanding from a man for her career, but doesn't offer the same when it's his turn to be busy. The truth is, men don't want to compete with a woman's job for a place in her heart. They want to be a priority, not a gap in her calendar, and when they realize they'll never be, they simply walk away.